Yeah, this is Matt Douglas, Senior Director of Solutions Engineering here at CBTS. Yeah, you've probably seen me on a number of webcasts before. You've also got Chris Pope, who joined us here, who's our Director of Network Engineering on the telephony side, on our voice core. And so Chris is kind of a wealth of knowledge about how our core works, particularly around the BroadSoft side. He's going to talk a little bit about Webex Teams for BroadWorks. And then we've got Alex Broom as well. Some of you on the phone here or on the call, the webcast may have met Alex before. He's on my team on the solutions engineering side. So thanks for this opportunity. One of the questions that we started off with or had last time on the first in our series was, why are you guys even talking about Teams? It's an inferior platform to these other solutions, right? And I think really the world's changing a little bit. I know myself personally in the last month, I have been pulled into, now 5 different large Teams, investigations all over 1,000 users where people are looking at Microsoft Teams voice now for the first time that they would have never considered it before. So I think that, yes, you could possibly argue that the Microsoft Teams PBX or maybe even its client is not up to snuff with some other platforms, but customers are starting to look this direction, right? And Microsoft's a big power. We talked about that kind of 800-pound gorilla. I tell a quick story. I worked with my father for 10 years. And when I worked with him and we talked to customers, we were selling voicemail systems at the time. Customer would come in and customer would say they would want something, and I would try to sell them something different, And one day my father pulled me aside and said, Matt, he said, these people are coming in and they're wanting to buy a brown suit, and you keep trying to sell them a blue suit. And I'm like, yeah, because they look better in a blue suit. And he's like, you dumb ninny, I don't care whether they want a blue suit, they want to buy the brown suit, sell them the brown suit. And there was a couple of cuss words in there. So I think in a lot of ways, that's the message I wanted to try and get on Teams. You could make arguments that the Teams PBX is not as good, the client's not as good. There's a big effort out there that people are starting to look at Microsoft Teams, and in CBTS here, we want to help enable that. All right, so the first thing though we want to get to, and we mentioned this in the first broadcast, was Cisco is coming into this space, the collaboration space, in a way that I think going to surprise people. And that really starts with a client that we're talking about, we mentioned last time, called Webex Teams for BroadWorks. I think we mentioned before that if a customer came and took a look at the Cisco BroadSoft or BroadWorks services, oftentimes when you showed them the UC1 client, the collaboration client, it wasn't quite up to snuff or didn't have the brand name compared to the Ring Centrals or the 8x8s or the Zooms, etc. Well, the Webex name is a pretty big name, right? And again, but I think that's one of the things we talked about, that we're still at the very beginning of this adoption curve in UCaaS and collaboration. There's a lot of room there for people to take a look at some of these new solutions, of which we believe Microsoft and Cisco Webex is going to be much more predominant than we've seen in the past. So this Webex Teams client, I want to kind of kick it over here to Alex and Chris. But we want to give you a live kind of demo to show you that this new Teams client is not only what you would expect in a collaboration space, all the same instant messaging and presence you'd expect, but also the audio conferencing, the web conferencing, and really the shared workspaces too. Alex is going to talk a little bit about how people are using shared workspaces for both internal and external clients, and then also show you the soft phone as well, because that's really the kind of the new glue here, is that now you've got a world-class collaboration platform for Cisco, which always, Webex name was always pretty good, but now you've got this kind of world-class collaboration and team space now with a soft phone that links into your UCaaS platform. So it's now a much more relevant product, we believe. So I'll go ahead and turn the screen over here. Actually, Gabby, I guess you two to Chris. And Chris and Alex, I may interrupt you, but I'll turn it over to you guys to give a little view of Webex Teams for BroadWorks.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. I'll go ahead and share the Webex Teams application here. Looks like it's...
One thing I didn't mention before you guys start, we're going to do this for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to whiteboard and talk specifically about Microsoft Teams Direct Route, because that, and again, that's been one of the big titles of this series here, is how are we also dealing with Direct Route. So Chris and Alex will go through that, but I'm going to come back and we'll talk specifically some whiteboarding on technical details of Microsoft Teams Direct Route and how it affects you.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. So for everyone in the audience today, this is really one of the first looks you'll see at the one of the newer versions of Cisco Webex Teams that'll be coming out over the next week or so. And Cisco's iterating very quickly on adding more and more features in here, specifically from a call control side. But really, what you're seeing on your screen now is should look familiar to those that understand Cisco Webex Teams and have used it before, because it is still the same application that it's always been, just new enhancements. So the tie-in for the BroadWorks platform and that UCaaS kind of connectivity that hasn't been here before, that PSTN dialing, that's something that is brand new. That's something that is going to be taking advantage of all of those feature-rich items that everyone's come to know to expect from a Cisco BroadWorks environment. What we'll run through here though is just a general overview of Cisco Webex Teams as a whole. Just starting from the top left and working your way down a traditional collab application. You have your spaces, your direct messages with the individuals that you talk to and work with throughout the day, and then moving down, you really you have the ability to create teams. And Alex, feel free to jump in, but this is
go ahead and click on that one team there that I created for us for this purpose. One of the really cool things about this platform is it very much feels and functions like a chat client. So it's very user intuitive. If someone's never used Teams before, they're going to be able to pick up and really get the full experience and all the added benefit beyond just a chat client. But it still feels and navigates like a chat client. So it's easy to use. It kind of puts the power of just that collaboration and chat and working on items and content with people at the forefront instead of behind a bunch of menus and different sub items you have to click on. What Chris is clicking through now is a team, pardon the lingo, but a team that's been created inside of this platform, which is a group of people. So you've created a team, you've pulled in select individuals from in and outside, even outside your enterprise, and you've then given them access to this kind of group space. And inside this group space, they can do all kinds of things. They can send each other private chats. They can join these group chats that can be spun up by the project manager or the team moderator or even members of the team. And then inside those spaces, they're persistent. So if somebody is chatting back and forth and somebody joins the space at a later date, they'll be able to see those messages. They'll be able to see the history of what was going on before they joined the project. Additionally, you'll be able to share content in each of these spaces, even inside of a one-to-one chat. You can drag and drop files. You can do whiteboards back and forth. A lot of these things you can actually do without joining a real-time meeting. So you could even do like a screen share, but not have to join a live meeting like we're on now. So you might be in a separate meeting, but then screen sharing with somebody else in your organization to work on something with them. It's all really, really awesome. And then one other thing I wanted to mention is, this is kind of like a folder structure, but in that first view that you saw when Chris first loaded the application, that was just an unfiltered list of all the spaces and all the one-to-one chats he's in. So he can have easy access between, the most recent chat and somebody he's talked to earlier in time. He can also use the search bar up there at the top. If he starts to search there, he can search for keywords, and he can actually look for files that have been shared. He can look for people that he's talked to. He could even look for hyperlinks. So if he starts typing, like if I shared Chris a file from msn.com and he saw it, a couple of days ago, but he didn't click on it and read the article, but now he's got time and wants to, but he can't find my chat. If he just thinks to himself, oh, Alex shared me that thing on msn.com, he starts typing msn.com up there in that search bar, it's going to actually show him that a hyperlink that he's able to click on directly from my chat. So I didn't prepare that for this demo, but that's something that we use all the time. And then one last thing I'll mention about these teams, I mentioned you can collaborate with external users, and it's really, really seamless. Rather than the Microsoft experience where, it takes a little bit of back-end work to get it all set up so that your two organizations can talk to each other. Here, the Webex Teams admin can allow this external user chat, and you can still limit things like file sharing and so on and so forth. But if I want to stand up a chat and talk to one of my clients or one of my partners, I can just start. I can add them to my chat client just by clicking the button to add a new chat, put in their email address, and send them an invite, and it'll stand up that chat space, and they'll just get an email notification in their Outlook or whatever client they use to join this team space and start collaborating with me, which is just amazing how quick and easy it is to start working in this space.
I know that we use it internally, right? When we're doing project management with customers, this is our tool to make a shared space. So we'll make a customer X as we're installing, our UCaaS, our VeloCloud, our NAS product, Meraki product. We're making a shared space for our internal, members of the project, our external members, and all of this information is persistent, all the documentation, et cetera. So this new kind of paradigm really of really a virtual conference room with, with file cabinets and whiteboards and the whole thing that is persistent and stays, and I can build these as many times as I want for as many projects, inviting as many people. And that's really been the strength in a lot of ways of Microsoft Teams and meetings. So.
Yeah, I think that's the new world, right? Now that a lot of us are still at home or at least separated from most of our colleagues, we've got to have a way to collaborate with them that's easy to use, but it's still like sitting in the room with them, and that's really what these tools do. And Webex Teams does it, I think, better than just about anybody else. One other thing you'll notice there. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, go ahead, Alex.
So I was just gonna point out that this isn't, we've been kind of focusing on the things that you do and then somebody reads. So like sharing a file, a chat, etc. But you can spin up a live meeting. So let's say you're working on a project and you want to have a one-to-one face call or a one-to-one audio call. You can do that just by clicking that meet button there at the top, and you can do that for a one-to-one chat or even a group chat. So if you're, let's say Chris and I are working in this engineering space, and there's a couple other engineers in there, and we're working on something that it's just difficult to get across via text, and everybody's trying to chime in at the same time. We could spin up a quick call, and it'll call all of us, and we could all join via the Teams client and work through that. And then I think, Chris, if you want to work down towards the scheduling and the phone features, I think that'd be a good place to go next.
Yeah.
We do have one quick question, if I can interrupt.
Sure.
Any idea on migration plans for users on HCS, et cetera?
So it's on the roadmap in the works. There will be a migration plan for both HCS customers as well as hosted UC customers that are using UC1 SaaS today. The vast majority of HCS customers are using Jabber. I mean, that's still the kind of the go-to client, and you'll see over time. I can't commit to this year, but it could happen to where we start pushing this out to them as well.
This
great question.
Is going to be the new platform. Anything to do related to Cisco UCaaS and collaboration, this is now the new universal platform, and it's just being adopted across the entire portfolio. So
that's right. So this will have native calendar integration, Google Calendar, of course, Exchange, Office 365. You'll be able to schedule meetings from here. You'll be able to see meetings, join meetings from here. Very similar.
You see right up there, it says My Personal Room, right? This is the same experience you've got with WebEx Meetings today. So WebEx Teams and WebEx Meetings really in this version now kind of collapsed into the same tool. And in fact, when you purchase this from us, you can either purchase to have up to 25 concurrent members of a video or audio conference, or the premium user, which is 200 now, which we have a feeling is going to go to 1,000. So there's kind of two different versions as well of how many participants you can have. But this is your own personal room, like Alex was talking as well. So if you see us send out, one of us, let's say in the account management side or sales engineering, we send out a meeting invite. We're sending out a link for our personal room for anybody to come in with that WebEx experience, dial in, use VoIP, etc. So when you get WebEx Teams for BroadWorks, you're also getting a full-fledged WebEx meeting experience as well.
Yep, no, that's perfect. And then the last piece on here is really the calling. It's your traditional call history on the left, missed calls, all your calls, and then the ability, like any soft client, to really dial a 10-digit number and make that outbound call. So, I'll make just a brief call, and this will be utilizing this client, which is sending its SIP signaling to our CBTS BroadWorks platform and our session border controllers that we host in the cloud. It'll be sending this, and it'll be ran my cell phone here on this side. So that's really the gist of it. But
so I know we've only gone through about 15 minutes here, but the purpose was, again, we believe when you take a look at this, the kind of what we've been calling UCaaS 2.0, right? This new collaboration combined with what was the traditional UCaaS experience. Certainly the RingCentrals of the world, the 8x8s, Zoom's made a big name for itself as well. But we really believe that the partners out there, our partners, we're going to have to understand what Cisco's doing, and we believe Webex Teams for BroadWorks as well as for HCS is really kind of the next generation there to start to kind of make that 800-pound gorilla, a little more relevant, if you would. And we believe Microsoft Teams and Business Voice is going to continue to grow in this space, like it or not, and we're all going to have to figure out how do we build solutions around that, et cetera. So that's kind of, if you give me the ball back, that's kind of a good segue to talk a little bit on the Microsoft Teams direct route side. I'm going to go ahead, let's grab the screen here. All right, so if you see Teams up here on the screen, right, there really are kind of, what we've seen is like 3 different models of how you as a partner are possibly going to engage with a customer when they talk about wanting to use Microsoft Teams Business Voice, right? And so if you think about a client sitting down here on the desktop, right, this is an MS Teams client that's sitting there, and it's registered back, right, to Microsoft Teams, to that core, right? But if it wants to have a telephone number, if somebody wants to have a telephone number, right, in the past, typically, right, we all grew up, right, of PBXs that were sitting in the customer premise, had a telephone, and we were connected to the public switch telephone network somehow, SIP trunking, PRIs, etc., right? And then, of course, we've all kind of grown up selling UCaaS services of some kind, right? Where we take that PBX and we move it into, in this case, CBTS's UCaaS structure, okay? And that's either our HCS, Hosted Call Manager, or Cisco BroadWorks. Those are kind of clear environments, right? Either a customer premise or move into the cloud with a UCaaS provider. But what's this Teams world look like, right? Because you can have a Microsoft Teams client today, right, sitting on 2 desktops, and they're both registered back to Teams, and they can have a voice call. They can talk to one another all over VoIP, never touches the public switch telephone network, no cell phone, nobody can dial into it, a cell phone can't dial into it, but client to client can dial one another. Well, the moment that you want to put a telephone number, you want to put a DID number on one of those users so that somebody from the outside, somebody sitting up here at a cell phone can reach to them, how are you going to do that? All right. Well, of course, one way is you can buy a dial plan from Microsoft. Microsoft will sell you a dial plan. It's like $12.95 a month, okay? And it will give you that DID and give you that 911 service. It's expensive, okay? That's one problem. The other problem is it's not necessarily the most reliable. It's the SLA on that is 99.5, which is kind of not what we're used to in the world, right? So what's this idea then of direct route, and what are people doing if they're not going to get a dial plan from Microsoft? Well, CBTS is at the forefront of this. We're not the only ones, but we're at the forefront of this, and we have put up direct route directly to Microsoft, okay? This is coming out of geo-redundant data centers, right, connecting to Microsoft geo-redundantly. And this basically is about us taking our core and being able to deliver dial tone so that we now can take a telephone number and put it down on a client down here so that now somebody can dial out from the outside, that cell phone can dial out from the outside and make a phone call through Microsoft Teams and ring that client, right? And this is something that we do, this is a common piece, right? Now, when people are looking at Microsoft Teams, then the question is, this is a PBX, this is a UCaaS service, it's a PBX in the cloud, but the question is, does it have all the features that you need? And that really has been a challenge yet inside of Teams, right? That it's like you can't do shared line appearances in Microsoft Teams. Something as simple as, we all work in a department or a parts counter, and we want to have 4 lines at the top of every single phone plus our private extension so we can put people on hold on lines, or we want to have a shared line that we can put people on hold and see that. You can't do that in Teams. It's not easy in Teams to try and make it connect to paging systems or to door openers, or let's say you want to build some multi-level auto attendance, multi-level hunt groups where you want to ring 3 phones now and then make it pick up 2 more phones and then 2 more after that, and then finally go to a department voicemail. These things aren't easy to do in Teams, and so the PBX over here has been somewhat lacking, kind of a couple minus signs. So what are people starting to say, and what are we doing working with customers is, well, wait a minute, yes, maybe you want to move some Teams client over there, but how about, since we're also providing the direct route to that, what about we also provide then the UCaaS service, right? And so consequently, we can take care of small call centers over here, complex hunt groups, shared line appearances or key systems. Whatever you need over here, we can kind of combine both our UCaaS services together with a Microsoft Teams approach. So, because again, customers, when you move to Teams, it isn't necessarily going to be able to do everything that you need. Like, even when you get to, I think maybe in the last call I mentioned, we're talking to a hospital right now with 30,000 users, and we figure somewhere in the 10,000 to 12,000 users can go over to Teams, but there's all sorts of other environments of emergency rooms, nurses' stations, integration into pager, nurses' paging buttons via SIP that are going to have to come out of a UCaaS platform. You simply can't do it in Teams today. So this idea of, one, if you had a customer that you needed, that they determine they are moving completely over to Teams, you still can be in the revenue stream. It's significant. In fact, the direct route up here, we kind of sell typically as a per user. And although the dollars aren't quite as large as on the UCaaS side, they are significant. It keeps you in the revenue stream. But that's one model to do it as, they're going to move everything to Teams. The second model then is kind of this hybrid of where they're going to have some users on Teams, and they're also going to have some users on our UCaaS platform. And using that UCaaS platform, then our solution there to be able to help round out the things that you can't do in Teams by giving them a full solution. I'll stop here briefly. Are there any questions that have come up, Gabby?
Yep, so we did have one question that came through. Ring Central and 8x8 and others have direct routing options. What are your primary differentiators from others in the space?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question. As always, really the differentiator isn't necessarily the technology. We're known in the space, right? Many of the partners that we're on the phone with, or on this webcast with, we're known as handling more complex environments, right? With more creative engineering, more kind of deeper project management and delivery, right? Being a little kind of large enough to matter, but flexible enough to design and deliver these things appropriately. So our expertise would not necessarily be about us being able to do direct route better, because the direct route pipe, whether we put this up or Ring Central, it would be about us being able to manage and deliver an entire project, bringing multiple components together. So that's a great question. Direct route, there's only a couple ways to do it. Ours would be the expertise on how to bring this together and deliver this in a white glove experience. Any other questions there, Gabby?
Nope, not at this time.
So then there is kind of what we run into, one other model, if you would, is that let's say that this customer isn't really quite ready for UCaaS from Ring Central, anybody else, or us, right? But they do have some users they want to get on Teams, and so the same kind of thing can happen as placing an SBC, right, on their customer premise and delivering SIP trunking down to them. now that we would be delivering not only the SIP trunking, but the direct route. And so consequently, we can enable extension to extension dialing even between what is kind of seemingly two disparate worlds here. And so this other model of we also believe right now there are going to be some times where people have some PBXs, they're just not ready to get rid of the customer premise equipment, but they want to bring some MS Teams clients on the business voice side into that same extension to extension plan. And that kind of is the third other deployment model that we've seen here, and we're certainly able to help with. So again, it's the idea that, Microsoft, when you went back 2 years ago, it almost kind of looked like, Skype for Business and Skype for Business calling was going to go away. It just wasn't going to work. They had screwed it up for so long that it was tough, right? But it's clear in the last year to 18 months that this new branding, this new functionality, what they're doing in MS Teams, what they're doing with Direct Route, there are a lot of people waking up to this. Now, I think it still is banded at a certain degree, in that, if you're talking to a company that's got, 10, 20, 50 users, they're probably not going to look at Microsoft Teams. They would be more of a UCaaS play, right? Just because so much can be done out of, CBTS UCaaS with Webex, Webex for BroadWorks, or RingCentral, somebody like that even. But the UCaaS can probably, fill that. You start to move upstream and you start to get to companies 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 users. The Microsoft presence starts to get a little more important. There's a little bit more mind share, and I think that's what we're seeing. We're not talking to so many people in the 25 to 200 user range about Microsoft Teams. We're talking to more people in the 1,000 to 10,000 users of Microsoft Teams so far. So I think that's also another thing here too, is that Microsoft Teams isn't going to come over and take over the world in the 20 to 100 seat range. It's going to be typically larger, kind of in the larger mid market and lower enterprise, we believe. Alex or Chris, any kind of comments or thoughts on some of the stuff I've been spouting about, Direct Route and Microsoft Teams here?
No, you hit the nail on the head with a lot of the whiteboarding here on the Direct Route. The common dial plan is going to be critical, being able to do extension dialing between Teams users and those common area phones, those phones you just can't get rid of. You might be in an environment where there's a PBX out there and it's met its point where it needs to be either refreshed, new hardware put out, or you make the jump to the cloud hosted. And it's nice to know that there are so many options, and all it takes is to come to us and we'll kind of tell you which one's the best fit, the best, we'll have the most life left in it when you go that route. But we're really positioned to help out.
I think what's interesting, and we talked about this last week, Matt, is the user adoption, right? I think that the difficult part of using or getting companies interested in this new world of UCaaS and collaboration tools has been adoption rates in the past. But as a result of coronavirus, if you just look at Teams as an island, Microsoft Teams went from how many users was it? I think you mentioned it was like 16 million to 80 million or something like that in the last year.
No, it's exploded. No question. Absolutely. One thing I did want to bring up as you guys were talking, Chris, you're talking, I didn't mention it. One of the things we're also able to do is if you take a look at this user down here that might have a UCaaS phone on their desk and then might have a Microsoft Teams client on their computer, we're also able to take those two and make them look like a single number, so that when that call goes in or out of that network, whether that call is being delivered to their Microsoft Teams client, it's being delivered to their UCaaS phone, or it's being delivered, let's say they get our UCaaS phone and they get Webex Teams for BroadWorks, they could have that client. All those clients can show the same telephone number going in and out as well, because it's all going through our UCaaS core and we can control that. So I wanted to bring that up too.
That's actually what I was going to ask you to mention, because I think what is critical is that now that adoption has increased, what we want to be able to deliver to our user community is that one experience, right? We want to give them the flexibility, let them have control over where they take and make calls. We don't want to force them to take a phone home if they're comfortable using their laptop or they're using their cell phone. Or we want to let them use the client and the application that they want to, and that enables them to be the most productive user. So I think that is the new challenge, right? This adoption rate went way up, which is awesome, but now companies are struggling to figure out, how do we make sure that now that people are using Microsoft Teams, that they have the same power and the same user experience that they would have had if they were in the office sitting next to their desk phone?
Yeah. Gabby, I think you had a question?
Yeah, we do have a couple of quick questions, which we might go over a little bit. But if the customer has been used to open MS Teams or Microsoft Teams, IMs, with other organizations, how do we handle that function when going to WebEx Teams? I have not seen open WebEx Teams to Microsoft Teams Federation meeting message between a WBT client and MST client.
I mean, today there isn't native federation out there. There are some companies that act as an in-between. One well-known one is MIO. They did a lot of work between MS Teams and Slack, and they've also done a lot of work between Slack and Cisco Webex Teams. I'm sure there's some other players out there that kind of handle that go between that translation, so to speak. But there's nothing native today.
Gabby, that particular department that sent that in, let's capture it, because we'd be happy to, help do any kind of research or have Chris help to find out how to solve that problem. I don't know the answer, Chris. Thank you for that. Your point, I think, Chris, is somebody's out there doing it. We just don't know who on this particular webcast right now. So we can capture that and see if we can help.
Okay. And then can they use their old IP phones on Teams voice, or do they need MS certified phones?
They need MS certified phones today. That's because Microsoft Teams is a newer closed environment. They're going to have to use a phone that's certified to talk to MS Teams.
I mean,
that's what the Teams PBX, right, Matt? If we're looking at option 2 or 3 there that you have on the whiteboard, we're talking about a different type phone.
Correct. That's a great point. If this is if this is just a standard SIP phone here, and they want to take that SIP phone and move over to us, we support that. We support bring your own SIP device, right? It's that if you took and brought that phone over here, it's going to have to be certified to talk to Teams today. That's right. Our UCaaS platform is a lot more open because that standard has been open a long time. Broadworks has been doing that a long time. So we support bring your own device. Teams has to be a certified device. Great point.
Okay, if I have my UCaaS phone synced up with my Microsoft Teams client, what happens after I answer the call? Can I manage the call from the client if I answer on the handset? For example, conferencing, transfer, etc.
so there's two different ways that we can do this. If you natively have our UCaaS service, hosted UC, you'll have the Cisco Webex application, the Cisco Webex Teams application, and there is a web app inside of Microsoft Teams in their little app environment at the bottom left of that MS Teams client that you can find Cisco Webex calling, and it will act as a kind of intermediary. So you'll have to use the Cisco Webex Teams client to kind of manage the call. That way, if you answer on the phone, if you don't go that route, and we're going the route of phone registered to the CBTS UCaaS cloud, at that point we're just simultaneously ringing a number into the MS Teams soft client, into the MS Teams world. So that way we would be able to manage from the application to the phone itself. But that's a good question.
It's still a challenge. I mean, that world of bringing those together, that seamlessly you can take a call on either device and control it with MS Teams. It's not quite as seamless as you will get. Yeah,
that's right. And that's the difference between, do you go with CBTS UCaaS and get our flagship offering of the Cisco Webex Teams client with that profile, and then do you use that that plugin that's native to MS Teams to kind of do a cross launch if you ever need to make a voice call out to the PSTN. And if you go that route, then you don't have to do the direct route piece with Microsoft. You don't have to send numbers over there, and we can talk through all of that. It's just we're able to integrate in multiple ways. And how native do you need the number to be into the MS Teams environment? If it needs to live in there, we can do direct route and get it straight in there.
Sorry, we do have a couple more questions. Do you guys want to continue, or Matt, would you like to follow up with others after the webcast?
No, I think let's take a couple more. That's fine.
Okay.
One thing before you go with the question that we hadn't kind of touched yet. The other thing is, and you've seen this in some of our presentations, is our ability. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Our ability to drop SD-WAN at the edge of this and be able to enhance. We've got SD-WAN gateways that are sitting in front of our UCaaS, and so the ability as well for us to not only combine direct route, our UCaaS product, but then even to use SD-WAN products, either Meraki or VeloCloud, to help give a better quality of experience on the voice as well. I think that goes back to this common solution. So I was kind of remiss in not mentioning that earlier, that probably, I don't know, some 60% or so of our engagements on the UCaaS side, we're also deploying an SD-WAN solution of some kind too. So go ahead, Gabby, what's another question?
Okay. Can the optimal user experience be Microsoft Teams IM and Cisco Voice? Cisco UCaaS plus direct route to Microsoft Teams. User experience called to the hard phone / Cisco while also SNR to Teams. No calling plan needed for Microsoft Teams.
Well, and we certainly agree you're not going to be buying any calling plan for Microsoft Teams up here. That goes away. We're going to be getting dial tone for Teams and direct route. But I think that's what we were trying to say here with what's in purple, is the ability to have both a UCaaS device from us and to have MS Teams enabled with dial tone, so that you can be making and receiving a call on either one of those. The same number shows up when I'm dialing out to the customer. It's the same number dialing in. It rings all these devices. Now, to Chris's point, there are some use cases that maybe you don't need to have direct route for that Teams client. You use UCaaS, you let that Teams client with its plugin, Webex plugin, start calls. But that's the kind of consulting that we would do with the partner and with the customer to figure out what's that, what are the tools they use today, what's the business outcome. We always can bring UCaaS in. Do we also need direct route? We just need to meet with the customer to figure that out.
There was a follow-up from the same person that posted that, and it was around the Microsoft E3 licensing versus E5 or the phone system licensing that enables direct route. So that is an extra piece today that Microsoft is kind of forcing upon anybody that wants to make this offering. And it's if an environment has all E5 licensing, they're good, they're ready to go. That means they're ready to either buy a Microsoft calling plan or a direct route service from a service provider like us. If they don't, if they're only running E3, there's an uplift license that you have to get, and they call it the phone system license, just so that user can be enabled to assign a number from direct route or have a calling plan added onto it. The one piece that I mentioned in there, the native CBTS UCaaS using Cisco Webex Teams, with that little plugin in the MS Teams where it cross launches, where you try to make an outbound call from MS Teams, it'll cross launch and pop up the Cisco Webex client. That kind of gets around those extra licensing that are needed, because it's not utilizing direct route, it's not utilizing a Microsoft calling plan, it's just using a native kind of plug-in on the laptop there to flop between the two applications. So hopefully that clears up the question there.
Let me give a little added color on that real quick though. If you think about it on a UCaaS perspective, let's just call this UCaaS user $15 a month, right? in the Teams world, if you want to take the Microsoft Teams client, and they have licensing of E1, E3, and E5. E1 and E3 do not have anything to do with they don't include the business voice or the audio conferencing. And so if you've got an E1 or E3, to Chris's point, you've got to spend for Microsoft $8 a month for the business voice to make it turn into a PBX, and also $4 a month for audio conferencing. So you're adding $12 a month, and that's before you've got any dial tone at all, right? And then if you're talking about a Microsoft plan, it's $12 a month. So to take an MS Teams, turn it on, and get dial tone from Microsoft, you're adding at least $24. Now, we, like one of the direct route providers, we are considerably cheaper on that per user, and with better services and the ability then to integrate in and make common dial plans, etc. So, but I wanted you guys to know that it's kind of strange that people are starting to buy into Teams in certain situations, but actually increasing the amount of money they're going to spend per month over UCaaS, because they're just buying into the whole collaboration experience. So now in our world, right, when we talk about this price here in the $15 to $20 a month range, we're now adding in that WebEx collaboration too. So you're going to see some new prices as this comes to market that our UCaaS and the WebEx Teams collaboration for BroadWorks, which is both Teams and meetings, is really even more powerful and a strong competitor to the MS Teams, trying to turn that into PBX. But again, the brown suit, blue suit, some of these people are going to buy Teams no matter what, and we're here to help you, monetize that and build a solution around it. All right, one more question we probably need to end. We've gone long here. Anything else?
Sorry, yep, one other. If you port over some EU numbers for an office in EU and they make a call out, will that show as an international number or local to that country? Is that call traversing back to the US Teams tenant or going out through the EU?
On international side, we need to talk to this partner about international. Our direct route today is mostly North American, United States and Canada. We are starting to add some international numbers in that. Now, if you talk about a Microsoft dial plan with international over here, and they give you an EU number, it's going to show as an EU number when you go out. But that particular partner here, I'd suggest we just need to follow up and explain exactly, understand what they're trying to solve there, and to see whether maybe our parts of direct route will work or whether they need to go somewhere else. So yeah. Okay. Well, again, we hope this has been useful. Let me grab my the screen here. And just talk about our next one in the series here. We've invited Brian Wilson, who's a kind of a Cisco cloud calling specialist, one of our representatives on this side, to help us with everything to do, particularly on the WebEx Teams for BroadWorks side. John Lloyd, who spent a lot of time first in sales engineering and is now director of our cloud networking, spends a lot of time kind of on the work from home paradigm, really. What's that VPN look like? What's an SDWAN client or device, in the work from home? I'll be joining as well, and Rob Messmer, who you've heard be an MC for some of these in the past as a moderator. The whole idea in the next panel then is kind of to talk about everything we've been speaking about in collaboration tools, kind of UCaaS 2.0, what's happening with the big players, Microsoft, WebEx, etc., and then what's going on with this whole work from home paradigm, and really what the changing calling patterns. I think one of the things we talked about the last time, pre-COVID, I did most of my calls on the PSTN and a cell phone. Post-COVID, this last week here, I probably, have done 70–80% of my calls in a collaboration space. So those are some of the things that we want to explore. Please come join us next time. Bring your questions. We look forward to doing this again. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.